Joining me now, first class father, Peter Facinelli. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. First class sounds too kind.
Well,
don't
well,
know.
you made it to the show. That's the title you got for the next few minutes here, at least. So
Yeah.
let's start right there. How many kids do you have? How old are
I've got 99 kids in a shoe.
they?
I've got four kids. I'll start my oldest. My oldest is 25. And then I've got a 20-year-old, and then a 16-year-old about to be 17. And then my first son, who is about to be a year old and like 10 days.
Yeah, I had it the reverse of you. We had three boys, then we got our girl on our final try there. So we have three boys and a girl. You going for any more? Or are you all done here?
Every time I think I'm done, I get pulled back in. I don't know. I never say never. On the hardest days that there are, like they flash that smile, and then you're just like, and then you look at baby pictures, and it goes by so fast. I mean, I can't believe it's almost one now. There's a 16-year gap, between the first and the last girl and my son, and I thought about it being the end of just fatherhood. Well, fatherhood never ends, but like being raising kids and then just coasting into my grandpa years. But I felt too young to be a grandfather, and I thought I'd miss. I don't know. I mean, I always had kids ever since I was 21. I've always had kids. So like, I started thinking about it. It's like, oh, in a few years, I'm gonna have an empty house, and what's that gonna feel like? And I just thought it'd be fun to do all over, you know.
Well, take me back, if you could, Peter, to the beginning of this 25 years ago. How old were you when you first became a dad and had that experience change your perspective on life?
Oh, I was 22 when she got pregnant, my ex-wife. So I think I was around 22, 23 when the baby was born. But I was 22. I remember when I found out I was going to be a dad, which was bizarre because like for me, I had just moved out to LA. I was on my own for the first time. So, having a baby call me dad was bizarre because I was just came from living at home and being with my own parents just a few years back. So it happened very, very fast. I don't People always say like, oh, you must be used to it by now. I don't think you ever get used to it. It's, you have someone's life in your hands, and it's a big responsibility, and it's a lifetime commitment. Like it's not like parenting's ever done. It's just different stages of parenting. So you try to give them all the tools that they can to be autonomous and to take care of themselves. But and then they get to a point where they give you advice too, and you're like, wow, this is a two-way street. This is my daughters give me some great advice sometimes. um and then yeah, 25 years ago, it seems like a blink of an eye.
Yeah, and you mentioned there too that it's a 16-year gap to you from your youngest daughter to your now son. So, what's been the biggest? I think, what would you say has been the biggest change in you as a father since having your last daughter and now your son?
Oh, I forgot how exhausting babies are. Like I love having a baby. I love having a son. And but you don't, it's hard to get anything done. Like, and I have, a great partner. And I have help, with a nanny a couple of times a week. But it's still like, I don't know how single parents do it because it's really, really tough. Like it takes a whole village. It really does take a village to raise a baby. I've got grandparents that come and visit the baby, and then her, the baby's sisters are 16. I got built-in babysitters there, 16 and 20. But it takes every part of your attention and awareness. Like you can never really, well, even if you're focused on something, if he's in the other room, even if he's with somebody else and you hear him crying, you run. It's like it's your instinct is like run and make sure he's okay.
Yeah, back to the basics. And one thing, Peter, I talk about on this show a lot is the fatherless crisis we have that goes on in our country, where so many
Yeah.
kids are growing up without a father or a father figure. And a big part of that is divorce situations and co-parenting situations that don't work out. And it's so important, when those situations do arise, that the child still has both of his parents involved in the life. So what has your co-parenting situation been like with your girls? And what is your girls' relationship like with your son, and how's that all working out?
Great. It was a big gap, and I had to, especially for the youngest one who's 16. She was 15 when she found out I was having another baby, and obviously it's a different mother than hers, and I had to sit her down and say, listen, this isn't me starting over with a new family. This is an extension of our family, and you're a big sister now. So it was really important to me that they didn't feel like they were left behind, and now I'm starting over with somebody else. It's like, this is just an extension of your family. Just like you have a stepdad and you have a stepmom, and now you have more people to love in your life. And that was an important conversation for me. And my daughters really responded, and they're, I think when the baby, it's scary, and then the baby's born, and then all of a sudden, they fall in love. You can't help but fall in love. And they have a great relationship with him. And yeah, it's been a long road. 20, you never get used to it. It's not something that you're like, oh, I've done this before, I know exactly what I'm doing. Everything's always changing. I remember when the babies were younger, and like I take naps with them in my arms, and the baby's mom, Lily, who's such a great mom, Jack's mom now, who's my partner, she was like, oh, you can't sleep with the baby because they said studies say that the baby could fall asleep, you could suffocate it. And I was like, really? That was the best part of having a baby, was like, you take these naps, and then it was like, but you grow and evolve, because I didn't know that back then. So you're always learning and always growing and always trying to be a better dad. And as far as co-parenting with my other three daughters, two of them are adults, so you co-parent in different ways. One of them still goes every other week back to her mom's and back to my house. It's so important to me that I'm involved in her life, that she has me as a dad. She has a stepdad, she has a mom, she has a stepmom, it's just an extension of more people to love. But I want to make sure that I still have so much more to teach her, and I want to have that relationship, because I also know when they're off to college, they're off on their own, and so I have 2 more years where I could still help form her as a person and help guide her. And then when she's on her own, she makes, we're farther away. We're always there, a phone call away, but we're further away, and I'm there to pick her up when she falls. I said something to her, my 16-year-old, the other day. I said, look, if you're ever in trouble, and this is important to me, and no matter where you are, no matter what you've done, if you feel in trouble or worried, or like, I'd rather you call me, and we'll have a code word, and I will come and get you, no questions asked. And you don't have to talk about it. But it's a free pass for me to come get you and bring you home, because I'd rather you call me than feel like, oh, I'm going to get in trouble. You know what I mean? It's more important to me, your safety, than, some sort of punishment or retribution for something you've done. Just call me, and I will come and get you. And I think that goes a long way. And she's 17. She's about to be 17. So like, I have to give her some sort of freedom to make mistakes, and some sort of freedom. I've taught her as much as I can. And at 17, she's going to make mistakes. We've all done it. But I still want to be there for her. And I still want to make sure that she's not afraid to call me, because she'll get punished or in trouble. Her safety is way more important, especially at that age.
Yeah, well said, Peter. I'm right there with you, because my oldest is 17. Our oldest is 17. We have a 17 and a 16-year-old. So we're right there, where it's just, I catch them lying about the little things. It's the main thing is that, listen, if you're going to lie to me about this, how am I supposed to trust you when we go to this? So it's really the biggest fear is them not being able to communicate when they're in that tight spot, to be able to say, hey, I could just call dad and he'll be all right to come get me, or whatever it is. Yeah. So I definitely feel you with that. And then as far as Lily, I know sometimes being a single dad with kids and then having a new partner, it's a difficult decision when to introduce them to your kids and bring them into the fold. So was there a certain point in your relationship you got to where you felt comfortable enough to introduce the girls to Lily? And then what was it like to watch Lily take on that role of motherhood?
Twofold. Well, one is, I always feel like, it's important, especially when I got divorced, the kids were a bit younger. So it was like 15, 12, and I think like 7, around those ages. and it was important to me for them not to have a revolving door of people that they get
Right.
attached to. So I do think, yeah, everyone's different, but I do think it's important. I think it was about 6 months, maybe 6 or 7 months, but I had like a 6 month rule, and I didn't really introduce them to a lot of people when I was dating. I think there was in the period I was dating, there was one other person other than Lily, but that was more of a friend, and I explained that was more of a friend. So I didn't really introduce them to a lot of women outside of that, because they're also healing, at that point, and there's still trying to navigate things on their own, and I just didn't want them getting attached to people and having them feel abandoned, by people. So it was important to me to feel safe enough to say, okay, this person is somebody I really have grown to love, and whether I don't have a crystal ball and I don't know if I'm going to be with them, but I want to introduce you to them, and I did, and it worked out. Lily, I've been with her for 7 years, and she's been great. And she, you know, she had a instant family all of a sudden, so I'm sure it was a lot harder on her. And a big responsibility too. I think when you're dating somebody with kids, it's got to be terrifying, because they're, to love that person, and then also meet these little people that are extension of them. What she told me was, I loved them because they were part of you. So that was really sweet. So she formed a love for them because she knew that they were part of me. Uh, but she's always had a great relationship with them and always been very kind. And so she had some practice there through motherhood. And I gotta say, she's such a great mom to Jack. And I tell her every day, I'm like, I'm so amazed at the amount of energy you have, the amount of love you have to give, the patience. She's so patient with him, so inspirational to me. I mean, even as a dad who's done it before, like I learn new things from her all the time.
Yeah, very well said. And I really, real quick, wanted to ask you too, just because with my daughter, it's definitely different the way I discipline her than I do my boys. So I wanted to ask you what type of disciplinarian you are as a father with the girls as they were growing up, and is that different than the discipline style you grew up with?
Well, I grew up in an Italian like family, so like, in Italian families back then, everyone's horrified, but there was a wooden spoon that they hung on the wall, and if you were bad, they'd whack you in the butt with this wooden spoon. And I had a couple of wooden spoons broken over me, and today people are horrified. Oh my God, that's
Yeah.
abuse. It's like that's the way it was back in the day. But it kept me in line, and for but I don't follow that. Obviously, I've never raised a hand to any of my kids. My dad never raised a hand to me either. It was always my mom who was the disciplinary. So I think that also made me, as a dad, really really feel like the dad is there to like talk it through. But Lily didn't grow up with that Italian parenting style either. So thankfully, like, our kids are fine. No one's whacking in them with any spoons. Um, but for us, it was more when they were younger. Obviously, a timeout if they needed it. But I do think that we don't give kids credit enough. Like they can be talked to. You know what I mean? And a lot of times, I think as parents, we want to match their emotions because they're so angry and frustrated, and it triggers us to get angry and frustrated too. And if you could just observe and be aware of it, and then not match them, they will start to match you. So I find that, like, as angry and as frustrated as, tantrumy as they get, if you remain calm and don't, match that, they'll start to match and calm down too. It's almost like you think, oh, I have to, yell and raise my voice to them, but then it only escalates. So, but I think that's a great lesson in life too. Even with a partner, like Lily and I don't raise our voices to each other, because I find that, like, I read somewhere once that when people are yelling at each other, it's a very odd thing to do, right? Like, yell at a person. It's because they don't feel heard. So they have to talk louder, you know what I mean? And they get triggered and they're trying to talk over the person. But if you both kind of calm down, even when you have that, anger or frustration, when you're intimate with somebody, you're whispery, right? And you care about them, and there's a love there. And so if you can bring your emotions, even when you're physically like angry and frustrated. And I learned this from Lily because she's so amazing at it, of observing and being aware, and then taking a breath, and then bringing your energy to a place of more, well, what's going on here? Let's talk it through, and being more intimate and quiet. And then you feel heard, and then you're able to talk through it. So we try to do that with the kids too, and she's super patient with Jack. Jack, is 1, and he's already started to get like the terrible twos where you take a toy or something and he starts screaming, and you're just like, and she's so good at like talking him through it, and so I learned a lot from her.
Yeah, calm is contagious, as they say. So tell me about the projects you got coming up here. What's the next movie coming out? What other projects you're working on?
Yeah, I have a movie called On Fire that comes out September 29th, and I play a dad in that, and that too is a family it's a middle America family who's got their problems. His dad's trying to pay the bills, and his dad's dying of as a lung issue, and there's a lot of problems within the family, and then this fire breaks out, and it just starts to put everything in perspective, because now you have a family that's trapped in this wildfire that's leaning on each other to survive, and so it's a really beautiful story about this family that's growing together through this wildfire, and then getting through it together. And each one of us, and Fiona Durf, who plays my wife, is 8 months pregnant in it. So it just shows you how strong women are when they're pregnant, because they're carrying around a whole nother being. And then you have Fiona Durf, who's portraying someone who's 8 months pregnant, who's trying to get through this wildfire and running and trying to save her family. And each character has a heroic moment, and we grow through it, and are there for each other. And, it's a poignant story. There's a lot of, fires going on almost every week. It sounds like something's in the news, especially with the Maui fires that just happened. And so we kind of, at the end of the movie, give tribute to the firemen, the first responders, and try to give a message of hope, and hope we can find a way to curb these fires. How can we figure out how to stop them from happening? I don't know. It seems like it's a global warming. I don't know, but like, how can we come together as a community? I was watching this one picture in the Maui fires, and there was this one house that was standing amongst everyone's homes, and they said, well, how did your house survive? And they said, well, we did an upgrade on our house, and we had a tin roof, and we cleared the brushes only because we didn't want termites. And so they were doing these things that weren't even fire preventative, but happened to save their whole entire house. And so there's got to be ways to come together as a community and figure out, okay, how can we live safely with when we're building houses? How can we build them to last? How can we build them to not spread these fires? How can we figure out ways to curb the fires, and just be there for each other?
Yeah, I love the fact that you pay respects to to the fire department, first responders. I was just swam across the Hudson River with a whole bunch of FDNY, Navy SEALs, and first responders. So I love and respect what they do. And now, real quick, you say your character is a dad in the film. Is that difficult for you, being a dad yourself? You've been a dad for 25 years. Is it hard to disconnect from your own experiences as a father as you get into the character that is a dad? And is it hard to not have your own natural fatherhood seep through into the character? Is it hard to keep that separate?
No, I think it all like naturally aids it, because I know what what it's like to be the head of the family, to try to lead the family, and to to be the dad of the family, but also have a strong mom who's sometimes right, and you have to listen to her too, and then also to not look at your children as oh, I know best, because sometimes they're right too, so. I think it all helps inform, playing a dad. I think it helps, as opposed to, of course, because playing a dad on screen, you're it becomes easier to understand what this father's feeling, so yeah.
Well, I look forward to the film. I know I'm running up against the time here. Last thing I want to hit you with here, Peter, I love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast, what type of advice do you have for that new dad, or for that about to be father who's out there listening?
Sleep. Get as much sleep as you can. They always say that. Get as much sleep, but you'll understand it when you become the dad, because not only does the baby get up during the night and your sleep gets disrupted that way, but sleep becomes a luxury, you know, like even during the day, you're giving so much energy to the kid, to your kids, and so even if this baby's sleeping through the night, you're just especially if you're like me, I was the youngest dad, and now I'm the one of the oldest dads. You know, so I'm not the oldest dad, but like you know, I remember being 21 and I was like the youngest dad in the mommy and me classes, and now I'm on the older side of the mommy and me classes. But you know, getting the sleep to have the energy to pick up the kid, take them to mommy and me classes or daddy and me classes now, and you know, give them as much love and attention as you can. And another thing of advice is like, I think I remember reading something that said if you have a moment where it's just frustrating and like the you know you feel like you're failing as a dad or you know your kids scream crying and you have the back hairs on your neck, you're just like you know, to if you had a time machine 20 years in the future, and you said, you know, you could go back to this moment and only this moment, you'd appreciate that moment because when you look back at their baby pictures, like, oh man, it went by so fast. It went by so fast. And I'm telling you, as a dad who has a 25-year-old and a 20-year-old and now almost a 17-year-old, like, and now this baby's turning one, like in the blink of an eye, I know it goes by so fast. And I know I'll blink my eyes, it'll be 5 and then 10 and then 15. So like I'm trying to really enjoy even the moments that are like stressful or you know, they get frustrated or you're running around with a full diaper and you're like, where do I change them? Count your blessings, you know, because those are the moments you look back on. And even, you know, on the hardest days, you'll look back and go, God, I'd trade everything if I could just go back and have them be that small and that little again, and hold them in my arms. And so enjoy every moment.
Yeah, right on with that. I love the message. This has been a lot of fun for me. Peter Facinelli, you're a first class father all the way. And thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time here in First Class Fatherhood.
Hey, thank you very much.